Thank you, Ed. Thank you, Susan. That was a fantastic introduction. It's never easy to do it, but you were absolutely fantastic and really good to see your colleagues here as well. Thank you all for that warm introduction when we arrived. Thank you for what you do, and thank you for being here this morning. We want to do a lot of work with you.
The announcement by Keir Starmer, leader of the UK Labour Party, that a new Labour government would no longer accept refugees.
Keir Starmer looking elated. That is an image of the Labour leader we have so rarely seen in public. Hugs, smiles, cheers, and handshakes.
Has sent shockwaves through the political landscape. This stark policy shift signifies a departure from the Labour Party's historical stance on immigration and humanitarian aid. Starmer's decision, framed within a broader context of national security and economic stability, marks a contentious pivot aimed at addressing growing public concern over immigration.
Well, no doubt Labour are thinking of a new word for it. They won't want to call it the crisis.
The migrant challenge,
The
maybe?
the challenging migrant situation, yeah. Well, they are rebranding it the illegal migration. They're going to call it irregular migration. This comes from a tweet from the Home Office. Why are they, you're civil servants. And the civil servants have put out a tweet saying, we are taking control of irregular migration. Actually, if you were actually doing your job, you'd just be doing what you were told by the government.
Yet it has ignited a fierce debate about the moral and ethical responsibilities of one of the world's oldest democracies. Before we start, hit the like and subscribe buttons for more exclusive news. Starmer's announcement, made during a high-profile speech, emphasized that the UK could no longer afford to take in more refugees without compromising its own social and economic fabric. He cited the strain on public services, the housing crisis, and the challenges of integrating large numbers of refugees into British society as primary reasons for this policy shift. The Labour leader argued that the UK must prioritise its citizens.
The rot of short-sightedness and self-service that has weakened the foundations of our country. We've started the rebuilding, but the problems that have been left to fester for years can't be cleared up overnight. And cast your minds back to 10 years ago, by way of example, when the Conservative government cut investment in clean British power. That impacts on your jobs. They told you that a clean energy future was possible as they blocked companies from building it.
And ensure that resources are directed towards resolving domestic issues before extending help abroad. This pragmatism, Starmer claimed, was necessary to maintain public support for the Labour Party and ensure national stability. The Labour Party, historically known for its progressive stance on social justice and humanitarian issues, has always advocated for a compassionate approach to immigration. This new policy represents a significant departure from the party's traditional values, raising questions about its future direction and core principles. Critics within the party have voiced concerns that this move undermines Labour's legacy and betrays its foundational ethos.
The microphones caught the proud host Keir Starmer giving stage directions for them all to head back outside for the important group photo.
Now we move to the family photo. You should have received an envelope which tells you your position.
46 national leaders processed out. Georgia's Prime Minister wanted to look his best. These gatherings of all Europe's leaders, EU and non-EU, were President Macron's idea to show solidarity against Russian aggression in Ukraine. President Zelensky and Moldova's President Sandu in prime position either side of Keir Starmer.
They argue that turning away refugees contradicts the spirit of international solidarity and human rights that the Labour Party has long championed. The timing of Starmer's announcement is particularly noteworthy. It comes at a moment when the global refugee crisis is escalating, with millions displaced by conflicts, persecution, and climate change. The United Nations has repeatedly called for greater international cooperation to address the plight of refugees. By closing its doors, the UK risks isolating itself from the international community and abandoning its moral obligations.
Let's go back to the new UK Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer hosting a meeting of dozens of European leaders at Blenheim Palace in England. Those are live pictures of him greeting those various leaders as they arrive for the meeting. Let's return to our correspondent Lewis Vaughan-Jones, who's there for us and is going to bring us more detail and more analysis.
Lauren, thank you very much. Yes, more and more leaders from right across Europe arriving. They have been for the last half an hour or so, walking up the red carpet, which is just behind me. They've been driving through this rather sweeping, dramatic courtyard in front of Blenheim Palace, here to be met, of course, by the UK.
Critics argue that this decision will have dire consequences for refugees who rely on countries like the UK for safety and protection. Starmer's supporters, however, contend that the policy reflects a realistic assessment of the UK's capabilities. They argue that unchecked immigration poses significant challenges, including social tensions, security risks, and economic burdens. Proponents of the policy believe that a more controlled approach to immigration is necessary to preserve social cohesion and ensure that public services are not overwhelmed. They suggest that by focusing on internal issues,
not part of the European Union, but very much part of Europe.
He spoke with reverence of the European Convention on Human Rights, which many Conservative ministers wanted to withdraw from. But on Ukraine, his words could have been interchangeable with the last three Tory prime ministers.
Our security is on the line. Every day Ukraine fights to protect not just the Ukrainian people, but the European people, a continent where our belief in freedom, democracy and the rule of law was hard won.
The UK can create a more stable and prosperous society, ultimately benefiting everyone, including future immigrants. This debate touches on the broader issue of national identity and the UK's role in the world. For centuries, the UK has prided itself on being a beacon of democracy, human rights, and internationalism. The decision to halt refugee intake raises questions about the country's commitment to these principles. It forces a reckoning with the idea of British values and whether they can be reconciled with the practical demands of governance in a complex and uncertain world. This policy shift challenges the UK to redefine its identity in an era of increasing nationalism and populism. The announcement has also sparked significant public reaction.
We committed to unblock solar power, begun solar rooftop revolution on new homes and businesses. And last week, we introduced a bill in the King's Speech to create Great British Energy, a publicly owned energy company making money for the taxpayer, creating the next generation of good jobs and taking Putin's boot off our throat once and for all, and doing our duty to the planet and to the next generation.
Human rights organizations, refugee advocacy groups, and many ordinary citizens have condemned the decision as heartless and short-sighted. They argue that the UK has a moral duty to provide refuge to those fleeing persecution and violence. Many point to the country's colonial history and its role in creating some of the conditions that have led to current refugee crises. By refusing to accept refugees, they argue, the UK is shirking its responsibilities and contributing to global instability. On the other hand, a portion of the public supports the policy, viewing it as a necessary step to protect national interests. This sentiment reflects broader concerns about immigration that have been prominent in political discourse for years. Issues such as job competition, cultural integration, and security fears have fueled a growing skepticism towards immigration. Starmer's decision taps into these anxieties, aiming to reassure voters that Labour is responsive to their concerns. It is a calculated move to broaden the party's appeal and reclaim voters who have drifted towards more right-wing parties. The economic implications of this policy are also significant. The UK's economy has long benefited from the contributions of immigrants, including refugees.
His achievement as the first British Asian Prime Minister of our country, the extra effort that will have required, should not be underestimated by anyone. And we pay tribute to that today. And we also recognise the dedication and hard work he brought to his leadership.
Many refugees possess skills and talents that enrich the workforce and drive innovation. By closing its doors to refugees, the UK risks losing out on this potential economic benefit. Moreover, refugees often fill labor shortages in critical sectors such as healthcare and agriculture. A reduction in refugee intake could exacerbate these shortages, leading to negative consequences for the economy. Furthermore, the policy could have diplomatic repercussions. The UK has been a leading voice in international efforts to address the refugee crisis. By stepping back from this role, the UK may undermine its credibility and influence on the global stage. Other countries may follow suit, leading to a reduction in global refugee resettlement and worsening the crisis. The UK's relationships with key allies could also be strained, particularly those that prioritize humanitarian values.
Should not be underestimated by anyone. And we pay tribute to that today. And we also recognise the dedication and hard work he brought to his leadership. But now our country has voted decisively for change, for national renewal, and a return of politics to public service.
This shift may complicate international cooperation on a range of issues beyond immigration. The announcement also has significant implications for the Labour Party itself. Internal divisions have already begun to surface, with some members strongly opposing the policy. This could lead to a fracturing of the party and weaken its cohesion. The party's traditional base, which includes many progressive and humanitarian-minded individuals, may feel alienated by this shift. Starmer faces the challenge of balancing the need to broaden the party's appeal.
At his end-of-summit press conference, Keir Starmer was asked if he might just consider following Italy's approach, sending asylum seekers intercepted on boats to a third country for processing.
Look, I'm a practical person, I'm a pragmatist, and I've always said we'll look at what works, and where cases can be processed closer to origin, then that is something which, of course, ought to be looked at.
With maintaining its core values and unity, this policy decision will likely be a defining moment for his leadership and the party's future direction. Critics within the party have not held back in expressing their discontent. Several prominent Labour MPs have publicly criticized the decision, arguing that it betrays the party's values and undermines its moral authority. They contend that the UK can manage its domestic challenges while still fulfilling its humanitarian obligations. These critics advocate for a more balanced approach that addresses public concerns about immigration without turning away those in desperate need of refuge.
Has cost every family and every business. So we need to move at pace to get those bills down. But I think today, this announcement is a historic announcement. I think it will give great confidence to the private sector to come up alongside a mission-driven government, a purpose-driven government, a government, if I may say so, with the mandate strong enough to take decisions that are measured in years, not months. That's been a huge problem of the last 14 years, but the last 8 years in particular, with a strong sense of industrial strategy and a fundamental belief that we should own and make things in Britain.
They call for a renewed commitment to international cooperation and solidarity. The debate over this policy also highlights broader ideological differences within the Labour Party. The party has historically been a coalition of diverse factions, ranging from moderate centrists to more radical socialists. This decision has intensified the tensions between these factions, each with its vision for the party's future. The centrists, who support Starmer's pragmatic approach, argue that the party must adapt to the changing political landscape to remain relevant. Meanwhile, the more left-wing members believe that the party should remain true to its principles, even at the risk of electoral setbacks. In response to the backlash, Starmer has defended his decision.
But on Ukraine, his words could have been interchangeable with the last three Tory prime ministers.
Our security is on the line. Every day Ukraine fights to protect not just the Ukrainian people, but the European people, a continent where our belief in freedom, democracy and the rule of law was hard won.
Arguing that it is a necessary step to address legitimate public concerns, he has emphasized that the policy does not represent a complete abandonment of humanitarian values, but rather a temporary measure to stabilize the country. Starmer has promised to review the policy regularly and adjust it based on the country's capacity and global developments. He has also pledged to increase support for refugees through other means, such as humanitarian aid and diplomatic efforts to resolve conflicts. Despite these assurances, many remain unconvinced. Humanitarian organizations argue that closing the door to refugees is a drastic measure that cannot be justified by temporary challenges. They warn that this policy will have devastating consequences for individuals fleeing violence and persecution. These organizations continue to advocate for a more compassionate approach, urging the UK to fulfill its international obligations and provide sanctuary to those in need. They highlight the contributions of refugees to British society and the moral imperative to offer protection to the vulnerable. The international response to Starmer's announcement has been mixed. Some countries, particularly those facing similar immigration pressures, have expressed understanding and support for the UK's decision. They argue that each country must balance its humanitarian commitments with the practical realities of governance. However, many other nations and international organizations have criticized the policy, viewing it as a retreat from global solidarity.
Illegal, breaking the law. If you come over here in a small boat, then that should, as the last government actually rightly declared, that should completely disqualify you from applying for any kind of status here. But unfortunately, the new lot have gone the other way, and they're going to pay a big price for that.
Indeed, and another Tory leadership hopeful.
The United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, UNHCR, has called on the UK to reconsider its stance and uphold its commitment to international refugee protection. The announcement has also sparked discussions about the future of immigration policy in the UK. Some suggest that this policy could be the beginning of a broader shift towards more restrictive immigration measures. They fear that other forms of immigration may also come under scrutiny, leading to a more closed and insular society. This potential shift raises concerns about the UK's ability to attract global talent and remain competitive in an increasingly interconnected world. It also prompts questions about the country's commitment to diversity and multiculturalism, which have been key aspects of British identity. The public discourse surrounding this policy decision has been intense and polarized. Media coverage has been extensive, with commentators and analysts offering varying perspectives on the implications of the policy. Some view it as a pragmatic and necessary step to address pressing domestic issues, while others see it as a betrayal of the UK's humanitarian principles. Social media has amplified these debates, with citizens from all walks of life voicing their opinions and engaging in heated discussions. This widespread engagement reflects the significance of the issue and its impact on the national psyche. In this charged atmosphere, the role of leadership becomes crucial. Starmer's ability to navigate this complex and contentious issue will be a test of his political acumen and moral judgment.
And we also recognise the dedication and hard work he brought to his leadership. But now our country has voted decisively for change, for national renewal, and a return of politics to public service. When the gap between the sacrifices made by people and the service they receive from politicians grows this big, it leads to a weariness in the heart of a nation, a draining away.
He must manage internal party dynamics, address public concerns, and uphold the UK's international reputation. This policy decision could define his tenure as Labour leader and shape the party's future for years to come. It presents an opportunity for him to articulate a clear vision for the country and demonstrate his commitment to balancing compassion with pragmatism. One of the most critical aspects of this policy shift is its impact on the lives of refugees. For many, the UK has been a beacon of hope, a place where they could escape violence, persecution, and dire conditions in their home countries. By closing its doors, the UK risks condemning these individuals to continued suffering and uncertainty. The personal stories of refugees, their struggles, and their contributions to British society highlight the human cost of this policy. It is essential to consider these narratives when evaluating the broader implications of such a significant change. The decision also raises legal questions about the UK's obligations under international law. As a signatory to the 1951 Refugee Convention, the UK is committed to protecting refugees and offering asylum to those in need. By refusing to accept more refugees, the UK may be seen as reneging on its international commitments. Legal scholars and human rights advocates have expressed concerns that this policy could lead to legal challenges and damage the UK's standing in the international community. Upholding these commitments is not only a legal obligation, but also a reflection of the UK's dedication to human rights and global cooperation. The economic arguments presented by supporters of the policy are multifaceted. On one hand, there are valid concerns about the capacity of public services and the integration of refugees into the labor market. The strain on healthcare, education, and housing is a real issue that requires careful management. However, it is also important to recognize the economic contributions that refugees can make. Many refugees bring valuable skills and expertise, filling labor shortages and driving innovation. Studies have shown that refugees often become productive members of society, contributing more in taxes than they receive in benefits. A nuanced approach that considers both the challenges and benefits of refugee integration is essential for informed policymaking. The political implications of Starmer's announcement are significant. By adopting a more restrictive stance on refugees, Starmer is positioning the Labour Party in a way that appeals to a broader segment of the electorate. This strategy is reminiscent of moves made by political leaders in other countries who have shifted their positions on immigration to gain voter support. While this approach may yield short-term electoral gains, it carries the risk of alienating the party's traditional base. The challenge for Starmer will be to balance these competing interests and maintain party unity while appealing to a wider audience.
4.5 years of work changing the party. This is what it is for. A changed Labour Party, ready to serve our country, ready to restore Britain to the service of working people. And across our country, people will be waking up to the news, relieved that a weight has been lifted.
The media's role in shaping public opinion on this issue cannot be understated. The portrayal of refugees in the media, the framing of immigration debates, and the coverage of political statements all influence how the public perceives these issues. Sensationalist reporting and misinformation can exacerbate fears and prejudices, while balanced and factual reporting can foster understanding and empathy. Media outlets have a responsibility to provide accurate and nuanced coverage, highlighting both the challenges and contributions of refugees. Informed public discourse is crucial for developing fair and effective immigration policies. Educational initiatives also play a vital role in shaping public attitudes towards refugees. Schools, universities, and community organizations can help foster a more informed and compassionate understanding of refugee issues. By promoting awareness and understanding, these initiatives can counteract xenophobia and build a more inclusive society. Educating the public about the realities faced by refugees and the benefits of diversity can help create a more supportive environment for those seeking asylum. Investment in education and community engagement is essential for fostering social cohesion and promoting positive attitudes towards refugees. The decision also has implications for the UK's foreign policy and international relations. The UK has historically played a significant role in global humanitarian efforts, often advocating for the protection of refugees and the resolution of conflicts that drive displacement. By stepping back from this role, the UK may undermine its influence and leadership on the global stage. Diplomatic efforts to resolve conflicts and address the root causes of displacement require strong international cooperation. The UK's decision could weaken these efforts and reduce the overall effectiveness of global responses to the refugee crisis. The announcement by Keir Starmer has also prompted a broader discussion about the future of the Labour Party. As the party grapples with this policy shift, it must consider its long-term vision and strategy. The Labour Party has a rich history of advocating for social justice, equality, and humanitarian values.
And yet this depends upon politicians, particularly those who stand for stability and moderation, as I do, recognising when we must change course. For too long now, we've turned a blind eye as millions slid into greater insecurity. Nurses, builders, drivers, carers, people doing the right thing, working harder every day.
Maintaining this legacy while adapting to contemporary challenges will require careful deliberation and leadership. The party must engage in a robust internal debate, listening to diverse perspectives and finding a path forward that honors its principles while addressing public concerns. In response to the backlash, Starmer and his supporters have emphasized the need for a comprehensive approach to immigration. They argue that addressing the root causes of displacement, such as conflict, poverty, and climate change, is crucial for reducing the need for refugees in the first place. This perspective calls for increased investment in international development, conflict resolution, and climate mitigation efforts. By addressing these underlying issues, the UK can contribute to a more stable and just world, reducing the pressures that lead to large-scale displacement. The policy shift also underscores the importance of regional and global cooperation in managing refugee flows. The UK cannot address the refugee crisis in isolation. It requires a coordinated international response. Strengthening partnerships with other countries, regional organizations, and international institutions is essential for developing effective and humane solutions.
On behalf of the whole House, may I be the first to congratulate you on your re-election. And I'm grateful that new members will be able to look to you as they begin the great privilege of serving their constituents in this House.
Collaborative efforts to share responsibility, provide financial and logistical support, and ensure the protection of refugees are critical for managing this complex issue. The UK's decision highlights the need for renewed commitment to international cooperation and solidarity. Another critical aspect to consider is the impact on the communities that host refugees. Integration is a two-way process that requires support and engagement from both refugees and host communities. Successful integration relies on providing refugees with access to education, employment, and social services while fostering a welcoming environment in host communities. Policies that promote social cohesion, cultural exchange, and mutual understanding are essential for building inclusive societies. The UK's decision to refuse refugees should not overlook the importance of supporting communities that have already welcomed refugees and facilitating their successful integration. In this context, the role of civil society organizations is particularly important. Non-governmental organizations, faith groups, and community organizations play a crucial role in supporting refugees and advocating for their rights. These organizations provide essential services, such as legal assistance, housing support, and language training, helping refugees rebuild their lives. They also serve as advocates for more humane and just policies.
The face of our country, the way we live our daily lives, the quality of public services, what our expectations can be for our children, and so on and so forth. There is no quick fix to this, but in order to work out how to address it, the very least we need to get to some idea of the bottom of what the hell is going on.
Yeah. And it does seem to me that Keir and Yvette Cooper are basically
raising awareness and mobilizing public support. Strengthening the capacity and reach of civil society organizations is vital for ensuring that refugees receive the support they need and for promoting more compassionate policies. The policy announced by Starmer has highlighted the importance of addressing public perceptions and fears about immigration. Misinformation and negative stereotypes about refugees can fuel xenophobia and hinder constructive debate. Efforts to counteract these narratives through education, public awareness campaigns, and positive storytelling are crucial. Highlighting the contributions of refugees and the benefits of diversity can help build a more inclusive and welcoming society. Engaging with the public in an open and honest dialogue about the challenges and opportunities of immigration is essential for developing informed and balanced policies. The debate over the UK's refugee policy is a reflection of broader global trends.
You know, the last government made a great song and a dance of this. You know, their Australian-style points system all turned out to be an absolute nonsense, didn't it? You know, if you can get points because supposedly we've got a shortage of ballet dancers or artists, and artists were actually on the list.
I know they were.
You know, yeah, sure. You know, we need carers. We don't need to import artists. That's ludicrous. And
around the world, countries are grappling with the challenges of displacement and migration. The rise of nationalism and populism has led to more restrictive immigration policies in many countries, sparking debates about the balance between security and humanitarianism. The UK's decision is part of this broader context, illustrating the complex interplay between domestic politics and global challenges. Understanding these global dynamics is crucial for developing effective and just responses to the refugee crisis. If you liked this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, could you leave your comments below and tell us? Do you agree with Starmer's decision to stop accepting more refugees? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.